Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of the Backcheck Podcast. It's me and Cam once again. Today we will be doing our Seattle Kraken expansion draft, and Cam is really excited. I am too. We've been looking forward to do this for a very, very long time, and it's finally here. So, if you like our content, make sure you go subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on the notification bell so that you get all of our updates and when we're going to post. And if you've done that already, thank you. We appreciate it, and enjoy the video. All right, so we will start off with the Anaheim Ducks. Now, as before we get started, we all know that the Seattle Kraken, 32nd team in the league, Vegas has exempted from the from giving up one of their players, so they do not have to protect anyone since they were the last team to go through this process. So they're exempting, so it's only 30 teams. So Cam, we're going to start off with the Anaheim Ducks. Who would be your first pick and why?
For Anaheim, they have a couple of guys, or Seattle, they have a couple of guys who they could choose from Anaheim. But I went with them not protecting the Ducks not protecting Hayden Fleury. And he's a really young defenseman. He's a really raw defenseman. Obviously, he was a first-round pick. Maybe he just hasn't worked out in Carolina's system. Let's see if he is exposed. And if he is, he would be a great pickup for Seattle to slide on to their second or third pairing.
Yeah, I believe I protected Hayden Fleury. I'm going with Adam Henrique here. Henrique is a veteran, and what's wrong with starting off with a veteran center? Henrique is a very good veteran center. Unfortunately, he's never been able to prove that, considering his career has been with two very lackluster teams, with the Devils and with the Ducks. He has made one Stanley Cup final in his first season. He carried his team to get there. I honestly don't know. I felt like I should protect the younger guys out here. So I took a risk by protecting Sonny Milano over Ryan Getzlaf. And, I don't know how that's going to play out. I really do like Ryan Getzlaf on this team still, but I think Henrique is probably the better option. He's younger than Getzlaf. So let's go with Adam Henrique for the Devils here, for the Ducks here. The second team is the Arizona Coyotes. I'll go for that one. This was not that hard to tell. I mean, Adin Hill could be a possible option, but I saved that for later. For the Arizona Coyotes, I went with Jordan Osterle. He's 29 years old. He's an unrestricted free agent next season. And what's wrong with picking him up right now? You protect three other great defensemen for yourself. I mean, OEL is probably going to be one of them you have to protect. But again, I think the Coyotes are fine on defense. First of all, OEL is on an NMC, and Jarlson will be the second choice, and probably Jacob Chychrun would be your third choice. So I went with Jordan Osterle for the Arizona Coyotes. Cam?
I actually did go with Adin Hill in that guy who has shown a lot of potential of what he could be, and maybe in a lackluster system, kind of stuck behind Ranta and Kemper, has not really gotten the nods, but a guy who many believe that does have potential to be a starting netminder in this league. As I say, goaltenders do take a little bit longer to develop. So I think with a little patience, and if Darcy Kemper does not get moved in the upcoming weeks by the Arizona Coyotes, Adin Hill should be on the board and will be the best player available for Seattle to select.
It's now the Boston Bruins. Cam, I'll let you kick that one off.
As a Bees fan, making this list the Bees are looking at a pretty good position, but this list was a little hard to make. I think Seattle will have their eyes on a couple of guys, only on the back end, either Jeremy Lauzon or Connor Clifton. Personally, as a fan, watching both these guys play, they're both really young defensemen, but I think Connor Clifton's the best fit here. Despite only being 175 pounds, he plays with an edge to his game. He elevates his game come Stanley Cup playoff time. He can play penalty kill. He can play 5v5. A guy who can log 18 minutes a night. He's a good bottom seven defenseman. Would be a great pickup for Seattle to establish some physicality and some youth on the back end.
Connor Clifton was my second choice, but I said, you have three players on an NMC here, Coyle, Marchand, and of course Bergeron. You're going to protect Pastrnak, and you're going to protect those other three guys. Taylor Hall has shown improvement, and he's shown good chemistry with this team. Protect him, and of course Jake DeBrusk. David Krejci is old now. There's no point really saving him. He's not as worth compared to Patrice Bergeron, who's also 35.
He's UFA too.
Yeah, and on defense, McAvoy, Grzelcyk, and Carlo are your three guys you're saving. I don't know who else you would really save. So I also went with the risk protecting Andre Kasha over Nick Ritchie. So my pick here is Nick Ritchie. I'm going to go with this guy. First of all, he's extremely young. He's a chippy player. He's a big guy. He's physical, and he's got great hands and skill. And definitely, this is a good, solid pickup for the Seattle Kraken, especially considering how young their team is going to be with that second overall pick. But this is a good start for the Seattle Kraken, and especially it'll all begin with Nick Ritchie. But let's go on to the Buffalo Sabres now. There's a lot going wrong with this team. You've got Jack Eichel wanting out. Then before you had Taylor Hall going. Now you're gonna have to give up one of your players. And for me, it was Tage Thompson. You gotta choose wisely who you want to protect. This team is extremely young, so you might as well want to save your veterans. So Eichel, of course, is a must. Jeff Skinner is on an NMC, so you have to protect him. I protected Kyle Okposo and Sam Reinhart, and I kept two good young guys. I kept Victor Olofsson and I kept Casey Middlestat. And on defense, of course, Rasmus Ristolainen, Henry Jokiharju, and Rasmus Dahlin. And the goalie was, of course, Linus Ullmark. So that left me with Tage Thompson, the rookie who was just guy who was just drafted last season or 2 seasons ago. Unfortunately, it's a big loss for them, but it is what it is. You got to protect your better players over him. So Tage Thompson, another good steal.
Yeah, I actually protected Tage Thompson. No need in protecting a guy like Kyle Okposo. If he leaves, that's fine. He's on a bad deal. Ullmark doesn't need to be protected because he is a UFA. But I went with Rasmus Asplund. He's a forward, probably maybe a good third line, fourth line guy, maybe a good AHL top line guy, but he does have a lot of potential to be something. He's played in a crappy system, but a guy with some good talent, has not really gotten a shot yet, but a guy I think who could fit well with Seattle, maybe on the third line or fourth line.
So next team is the Calgary Flames. Cam, I'll let you kick that one off.
I was thinking about this pick for a little while, and I thought maybe Oliver Shillington, maybe a forward up front, but then I ultimately decided I'm going to go with a veteran, Mark Giordano on the blue line. I like this guy's game. He's a complete professional, great leader. He plays the game the right way. He's a few seasons removed from his prime, but he's still an effective person in the locker room, a guy who can still log some pretty decent minutes, and a guy, I mean, who wouldn't want a type of character like that coming into the organization to establish an identity? That's what Mark Giordano can do for Seattle. And even though he's not a top 2 defenseman anymore, he's still a guy who can play solid top 4 minutes.
That's a great pick. I also have Mark Giordano. As Cam said, veterans matter the most. First of all, he's also the captain, so consider his leadership abilities must be extremely good. So this is also a great pick by the Seattle Kraken. You can expect this team to have an amazing start for next season. The next team on board should be the Carolina Hurricanes right now. And, for the Hurricanes, it was interesting. They have a defenseman dilemma right now. You have to consider there are 6 good defensemen I consider on this list who they could have to consider being protected or let go. Dougie Hamilton, Jacob Slavin, Brady Shea, Jake Gardner, Brett Pesce, and Jake Bean. On the forwards, it's not that hard. I mean, you got to protect only 6 guys or 7: Stahl, Aho, Teravainen, Niederreiter, Fogle, Fost, and Svechnikov. But on defense, Dougie Hamilton is probably going to go, so you're going to let him go to free agency. You got to protect Jacob Slavin. He's probably their best defenseman right now. Brett Pesce is solid. Protect him, and of course, protect Jake Bean. He's a young guy. He's going to grow up. So that leaves me with Jake Gardner or Brady Shea. And I think the Seattle Kraken will go with Brady Shea. Shea is tough. He's physical. His defensive game is a bit flawed, but again, we got to consider the fact that he can shoot the puck very well. And overall, he's a good teammate, and he has good qualities for somewhat of a leadership role. And he's a good locker room. He's a good guy to expose in the locker room. So a good pick here again. Not as great as the other ones, but again, Brady Shea is a great pick here because he's still in his prime. He's only 27. So Seattle will take Brady Shea here.
Yeah, Brady Shea's a good defenseman. I saw him in the playoffs log a ton of minutes for them. But I think with a log jam of defensemen, I don't think that's the pick they'll go with. I think they're going, due to the cap hit as well, I think they're going to actually go with a guy who has a little bit of upside. Nobody's really talking about his name is Morgan Geekie. He's played up and down the system this year, but he's a guy, he completes hard. He's a good shot, goes to the net. He's a really big body. I think a guy who could fit well, kind of like a guy like Asplund, maybe on the third, fourth line, has some development to do, but I think that's a young, raw pick here. And that's the best pick for Seattle.
The Chicago Blackhawks are on now. Cam, your choice.
Chicago is looking pretty good ahead of this draft. They're going to protect their core and protect the defenseman they have to protect. And then the guy in net will be Lankinen, I assume. But I think the best guy to pick here is Brett Connolly. He's a well-traveled veteran. He's played in the league for a long time. He's a good shot. He can play up and down your lineup, first line to fourth line, wherever you need him. He's a plug-and-play type of guy and a guy who's experienced, well-traveled. So I think heading to see Brett Connolly is the best fit for Seattle, and he'll be heading to Seattle at the expansion draft.
For me, it's Calvin DeHaan. Now, Calvin DeHaan is, I mean, he's 30 years old. He's an okay defender. He's not terrible. He's not great. But I mean, at this point, Seattle has a lot of room. They don't need a lot of tight spaces right now. So Calvin DeHaan might just be their seventh defenseman. I don't know what they're gonna do with him. They might send him down to become like a leader for their AHL affiliate, help those other guys in the those young guys develop in the AHL. Honestly, it can be anything. So Calvin DeHaan fits anywhere in this piece. Definitely not a top 4 defenseman, but he'll fit somewhere, either bottom 6 or whatever. Or sorry, third pair defenseman or first pair of AHL. So Calvin DeHaan for me. The next team is the Colorado Avalanche, and this gets interesting now because you got to understand how many players they have to protect and who they have to protect, because they're giving up a lot of great talent here, considering how great this team is. So for me, you got to understand Rantanen, McKinnon, and Landeskog, their first line is protected. Burakovsky, Kadri, and Donskoy and Jost are all protected on your forward line. Eric Johnson has an NMC, so you have to protect him. And I protected 3 other defensemen. Samuel Girard, of course you got to protect Cale Makar, and Devin Taves. So that leaves me with Ryan Graves to take. The other defensemen are not that solid. Patrick Nemeth is almost reaching his end of his prime. I don't know who the heck Dennis Gilbert is. Jacob McDonald and Kyle Burrows and Daniel Renouf are just going to go probably somewhere else. Who knows? They're all restricted free agents or unrestricted free agents. So Ryan Graves is actually a great defenseman. So let's go with Ryan Graves here. That's my pick.
Ryan Graves would be a great top pairing guy for Seattle, but I think since they're going to go with the 4 defenseman route of Makar, Taves, Girard, and Johnson, we're going to see McKinnon, Rantanen, and Donskoy protected up front, of course, and then Landeskog, if he doesn't sign, will not be protected until after the expansion. But I see them, Tyson Jost, if he's being exposed, which I do think he will be a perfect fit for Seattle. He can play top 6. He's a guy, I mean, obviously a top 10 pick a couple of years back. Obviously he has a ton of skill to his game. And I just, I think he's playing his minutes are a little sheltered right now, but with some experience, with some higher minutes, I think that could do him a lot of justice. So he's a really raw kid as well. I really like his game. So Tyson Jost will be a Seattle Kraken.
The Columbus Blue Jackets are up next. Cam, you should take that one.
Columbus, this one dropping stuff. 1 second. I'm back. Sorry. Drop my phone. Yeah, I think Columbus, they're in a pretty good situation. It's all good. I mean, depending if they make any moves like with Seth Jones and whatnot. But I believe right now at this point in time, Max Domi should be left exposed because he hasn't shown any value to Columbus whatsoever, especially with a cap hit of that much. I think he could be a good reclamation project for Seattle, a guy who's, he's been around he's not a young guy anymore. I'd call him a veteran and a guy who's been around. He's obviously shown some offensive potential and maybe a guy you could slide into your top 6 here under a new system, and maybe he can play well. If not, a guy maybe you can cut ties with. So Max Domi.
For me, it is Dean Kukin now. Here's the thing. Columbus had a really rigid year this year, as we all know. And honestly, I don't know who could they really want to protect and keep. But of course, Cam Atkinson, Gustav Nyquist, Max Domi, I actually protected. Patrick Laine, I got to protect Boone Jenner, and Jack Roslovich and Oliver Bjorkstrand. On defense, Seth Jones protected for probably 1 more year, and then after that, he's gone. Zach Rowensky and Vladislav Gavrikov. So that leaves me with Dean Kukin here. And I want to protect him for a few reasons. One, I think that, there's no need to. Their defense is pretty solid for the remainder of Seth Jones' time here. So I think this is absolutely a normal pick to make. So Dean Kukin for me, not much of an explanation needed.
Yeah.
Now the Dallas Stars are next, and this also got pretty interesting, I'd say too, because there's a lot of players they gotta protect. Sagan and Sagan and of course Ben and Klingberg and on defense. So for me, my pick, it was a forward, I'm pretty sure, or actually no, it was a goaltender. Sorry, it was Anton Khudobin. So this is a pretty obvious pick. I mean, I haven't picked a goalie yet, So, and Anton Khudobin led this team to the Stanley Cup final last year. So who knows? He can probably do the same thing with the Seattle Kraken. So Anton Khudobin is my pick.
Yeah, the reason I didn't go with Hudobin is I originally picked Aiden Hill, which I think he's a little bit more raw. Hudobin's getting to the end of his career, but I wanted a guy who probably can start out and play for the AHL team. Many Stars fans probably know his name. His name's Nick Camino, and I think he's only 21 years old. He's played a little bit in the NHL level. He's a pretty good guy. He plays a good 200-foot game, good winger. He's shown some skill and another just raw piece they can add to the team. And I think that's kind of the theme I'm showing here is there's some guys who have untapped potential. I think that teams may leave unexposed. So it's about finding these pieces and developing them into your lineup the correct way. And if Ron Francis can do that, he might and will hit on a couple of these pieces like a guy like Nick Camino. And that's the best pick from Dallas.
All right, Detroit Red Wings, kick it off.
Just like Nick Camino, another younger AHL piece, maybe a guy who can crack the NHL team, maybe a trade piece. Evgeny Svechnikov hasn't really worked out in Detroit, but maybe a change. Like another guy who's, like I said, with pretty much all my picks here, just another young, raw talent, former first-round pick, I believe. He can shoot the puck. He's got some offensive IQ. He's a good hockey player, not as good as his brother Andre, but still a solid hockey player and maybe a guy who could be traded, or maybe he's a guy who makes the team out of camp. I'm not sure where he fits, but a guy that's the best pick in Detroit.
All right. For me, it was Vladislav Namestnikov. Decent forward, not great. He signed with the team this year, 1-year contract after playing in Colorado. He had a solid playoff run in the bubble last year. He's a solid guy overall. He's $2 million, but he's a solid 30-40 point scorer, and it's a decent pick for them. They will have to resign him though in the 2022-23 season, but again, solid pick for them. The next team on board, I'm pretty sure after Detroit is Florida. I'm not missing a team.
Edmonton.
Edmonton, sorry. Yeah. Now Edmonton had a rough playoff run, as we all know, but again, protecting their big guys, Draisaitl, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins got signed to an 8-year contract. So who will they have to give up here? My pick is going to be Caleb Jones, defenseman now. He is a stud. This guy is an absolute stud. First of all, he is so worth the price, $850K for a 24-year-old defenseman who's just starting off in his prime and is an excellent defenseman. This is an absolute steal. Caleb Jones, no more explanation needed.
I also went Caleb Jones. And it's this might change in the next couple of weeks. I've heard rumors that surfacing that Jones may be a part of a trade involving Duncan Keith. So Chicago wants him and his brother Seth Jones, but maybe there'll be some trade. But right now he is left exposed. He's a really young guy. I think a guy who can, like Jay said, he's a young defenseman with a cheap cap hit, who hasn't really had his potential tapped into yet, like I said on probably 10 other players on this list. An excellent defenseman, no explanation needed, like Jay said. Now on to Florida.
Yeah. And for Florida, I'll kick this one off, I think. Florida has a lot of players to protect and, of course, give up like every other team would. But this gets actually kind of interesting now because, do you want to go with the defenseman or do you want to go with the forward? And I went with the forward. I went with Noah Acciari here. The thing is, he was on a no trade clause, but again, waived it off. Just decided to go with the 29-year-old who is a 1.6 million cap hit. He's still solid. I mean, he's not much to say, but again, he'll be a good fit, maybe a top 6 forward. Who knows? But Noah Acciari is a great start.
Yeah, I love Noah Acciari. He's one of my favorites. But I actually went with Radko Gudas just to get some physicality on the blue line. He's pretty well traveled. Played with Tampa, played with the Flyers, had a good season with the Panthers, and he led the league in hits this year. So obviously an effective guy laying out the body and a guy who can get into the corners and log some pretty decent heavy minutes, and hopefully he can help the younger players develop and teach them how to play the game the right way. So Radko Gudas from the Panthers. We could go either Acciari or Gudas, but I think Gudas will be the pick.
Yeah, he's a very good physical player as well. Cam, the LA Kings are on now. You kick this one off.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jay and I talked about this, but LA, they're looking pretty good. Most of their younger guys don't have to be protected. But a guy who might be an off the radar pick to many is a guy named Austin Wagner. This kid has absolute wheels. Let me tell you, this kid, he plays a very north-south game. Fast player, an effective guy, good on the forward check. I think a guy who's a perfect fourth line left wing for Seattle. I mean, any team would be happy to have this guy, and a guy who just maybe needs to work on his finishing ability a little bit. But if he's playing on the fourth line, that shouldn't be an issue. A guy, I mean, he just plays a very good north-south game. He's really young and really fast. So that's the best pick for Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Austin Wagner, he's also really young. You have to consider that too. He's only 24 and he's 1.3. So this guy could be maybe one of their long-term players for their future. He could be one of their brightest parts for their future. The next team on board is going to be the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know. I have that. Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota's next. I have the list right in front of me, but I don't know why. I went with Jordan Greenway here. This guy is not considered to be an enforcer, but I mean, he is really physical. So, and he's tall. He's big guy. He's a really big guy. He's 24 years old, 2.1 million cap hit. Again, Seattle can do whatever they want right now. They can put this guy anywhere. They can put him on the first line, put him on the fourth line, and I'll expect him to still perform. He's a very good physical player, as I said. His cross-checking ability and his checking ability is very good. He skates very well. So this is a decent pick coming along for Seattle.
Yeah, I do like Jordan Greenway, but I had Minnesota actually protecting this guy. And obviously a guy like Matt Dumba's exposed with their defensemen having no MECs, but I actually went with Kaapo Kakkonen, one of their goaltenders who I think they'll protect Cam Talbot. That it's going to put them in a tough situation. I see Minnesota as one of the teams trying to make a move with Seattle, maybe giving up a draft pick and somebody else to make sure they don't take Dumba or Kakkonen. One of those guys, maybe they give up something else to make sure. But for the sake of this episode, yeah, I mean, a guy you could split some tandem with Aiden Hill. Obviously, he split time with Cam Talbot. He was pretty effective with that. And I think Minnesota fans all know this kid is could be their future starting goaltender. So it would be a tough loss for the Minnesota Wild. But yeah, Kaapo Kakkonen, I could see being a good fit for Seattle.
Montreal for me. Yeah. I mean, this is not that hard to choose. Jake Allen will probably be let go of and just fed fresh bait into the ocean. So, I'm going to go with Jake Allen here as my second goalie. Honestly, I don't see anyone else who's really that decent compared to the other players. So definitely Jake Allen here.
Yeah, I actually went with Jonathan Drouin, having him unexposed. He's kind of had a tough year, especially with the young upcoming guys and a guy like Toffoli performing. And I just don't see a spot for him on the top six anymore. But a guy, I think a change of scenery on your top two lines. Obviously, he's got the skill, he's got the talent, and I think a place like maybe a new market, a market with a little less pressure, like that. Not Montreal, it's a pretty tough market to play in. So maybe going to a place that's more chill and relaxed, like Seattle. I think that could be a good fit for a guy like Jonathan Drouin.
I haven't seen that guy in a long, long time. But yeah, I don't know where he's been. What's that?
He's sleeping. I don't know where he is.
Yeah, no idea. He's just been gone, lost in the woods. The Nashville Predators are on, Cam. You should take this one.
This one is the steal of the expansion draft. If Seattle makes this pick, their defense is crowded. They're another team, like I said, like Minnesota, that will probably have to make a move to make sure this guy does not get touched. This guy is an incredible defenseman. He saw a little bit of time with Roman Josi, and I'd argue that he's better than Dante Fabro right now. His name is Alexander Carrier. This guy moves the puck beautifully, great skater, smart hockey player. And obviously they trusted him enough to log minutes with Roman Josi late in the season. Big contributor. It will be interesting to see if Ekholm gets moved or somebody gets moved so this guy stays. But if Nashville does not come to term on a move, this guy is the best pick for the Seattle Kraken. I promise you, he's going to be a stud. Shea Theodore-esque. Moving, Jay's turn for Nashville.
Nashville, yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, this goes really either way, but I went with the solid forward here. I mean, I went with Ryan Johansson here. Now I'll tell you why. It's going to be very strange if they don't protect him. But again, I have some slight feeling that they won't. Now, here's why. if you look at their roster and consider who they have to protect, Nashville's in a bit of a sticky situation here. You got Matt Duchene, you got Philip Forsberg, you got Mikael Granlund, Colton Sissons, and Luke Kunin. And then you got guys like Eric Hollad, Nick Cousins, and then, you got to protect your defensemen as well. And especially when one of them, your captain, is on an NMC, which is Roman Josi. So that's automatically out. Your goalie is Jose Saros. Pecorino is retiring. That's out. You're going to protect Matthias Ekholm. He's probably your second best or maybe your best defenseman. And Ryan Ellis, another great defenseman. And Dante Fabro, your young defenseman. There are now 5 players protected. So now you can only protect 4 forwards. You got to protect Matt Duchene. He's probably your best center. Your best bet. Philip Forsberg is probably the best player on the entire team in terms of producing points. You got to protect him. Now you're down to 2. Do you want to protect all your old guys and have no future, or have somewhat of a future and keep your veterans on there? If I was Nashville, I'd do the second part. So I would protect Colton Sissons and Luke Kunin, the 2 best young players at this point. And Rocco Grimaldi might have to take a leave here. Eric Holla might be in trouble, but again, I don't see any other reason why not to protect Colton Sissons and Luke Kunin over Ryan Johansson. And unfortunately, it's a really big loss for Nashville, but it has to happen. So Ryan Johansson is going to go.
Yep.
We're going to move on to the New Jersey Devils, right?
Yep.
So here's the interesting part again. You're going to be shocked about who I pick. My pick is PK Subban. Now, here's what's going to happen. They have a lot of players they're going to want to protect here. Mackenzie Blackwood is the goalie that's going to be protected. Your forwards, you're going to protect Michael McLeod. You're going to protect Pavel Zacha, Jesper Bratt, Miles Wood, Andreas Johansson, and Nico Hischier. There could be other guys out there, maybe even Yegor Sharangovic they can protect. They can protect Marian Studenic. I think they'll protect Sharangovic. Defense, Ryan Murray, Damon Severson, and Will Butcher. I don't see any, or maybe even Matt Tennyson if he wants to be protected too. But PK Subban's out. First of all, that contract is absolutely killing the New Jersey Devils from making any great signings. And he's an unrestricted free agent next year, but next year is going to be even worse for them if they have to keep paying $9 million. So PK Subban is going to be a deadly pick here for the Seattle Kraken. He hasn't been performing at all since he left Montreal. He had that Stanley Cup run in 2017, but after that, it's been all downhill for him, unfortunately. And it's gonna be a tough loss for the Seattle Kraken, honestly, because you're getting a guy who's 32, $9 million. That's gonna be a bad cap hit there, but it is what it is. So they'll have to go with their best defenseman there, and that's gonna be PK Subban.
If I was Seattle, I'm not touching PK Subban with a 9-foot pole. The contract is disgusting, and I'm not sure if the personality is a personality I'd want in the locker room. Obviously, I don't personally know this guy, but just the things that the media talks about. But I think Andreas Johansson will be left exposed over a guy. I think they'll protect Igor Sharangovich. Johansson didn't really have a great year, but this guy is a guy. Seeing him play with the Leafs a little bit, he's a guy who gets into the corners. You can rotate him up like a guy like Brett Connolly. You can rotate him line 1 through 4. He plays a fast game, quick game. He moves his feet, and a guy who has a little bit of a finishing ability. So a guy who could probably slide into any line. And I think he'd be a tremendous pickup for Seattle.
That's a good pick. The New York Islanders, Cam.
I actually went with Matt Martin, and this guy, aligned with Casey Kazikas and Cal Clutterbuck, has been fabulous. A checking line is needed. Imagine him having a line with him, Morgan Geekie, and Austin Wagner. That'd be a great checking line. And Martin he's a great teammate. He plays the game the right way. We talk about the enforcers and how they need to come back. This is true. He plays the physical game. He sticks up for his teammates. He's a great guy in the locker room, and a perfect, honestly, captain candidate for the Seattle Kraken.
I went with him too. They're going to need some enforcer role, and Matt Martin is the definition of an enforcer. So honestly, no need of an explanation here. This is pretty straightforward that he is definitely their enforcer on this team. So Matt Martin too. I'm going to move on to the New York Rangers now, who are next, and the Rangers they're not in so much of a situation, I'd say. Their best players are all protected, and most of the team that was starting, they're not eligible. They're exempting from the draft, which is really funny. Adam Fox, Alexi Lafreniere, Vitaly Kravtsov, Capo Caco, Let's see. Keandre Miller,
Yeah,
Zach
Miller.
Jones, Tarmo Reunion, Niels Lundqvist, Braden Schneider. The list goes. Igor Shesterkin. They're all exempting, so they
Good
don't
news.
have to worry about this. You know, they have four players on NMC: Panarin, Kreider, Zibanejad, Trouba. They're four alternate captains. They're going to protect Ryan Strome, who's had an incredible year, and so will they protect Pavel Buchnevich and Philip Hedl. Defensemen, they got to protect. I'm protecting Brendan Smith and Ryan Lindgren. I don't like Libor Hayek, to be honest with you. I don't think he's been that great. Tony DeAngelo is out of here. And Jack Johnson he has a herniated disc, so he's definitely not going to be going anywhere. And there's no need to even sign him. He's a terrible defenseman. So honestly, I'm going to go with Julian Gauthier here over Tony DeAngelo. First of all, everybody knows how much of a ruckus Tony DeAngelo has created in the past few months. I wouldn't want that guy either in the locker room, similar to how you said to PK Subban. And Gauthier is a much younger guy. He's 23 compared to DeAngelo's 25. But again, forwards are also important in this case. We picked a lot of defensemen. And Gauthier's young. He's physical. He's big, and he skates well. This is literally Chris Kreider, but, 9 years later. So this guy is a great guy. I mean, I hope he plays. He was scratched for the last 15, 17 games. So really sad to see over someone who's not even worth it, which is PDG, Phil DiGiuseppe. But again, this should be a great pick. Julian Gauthier for me.
Yeah, I also went with Julian Gauthier. No brainer. This kid, like I said, I've talked about it. He's a raw kid, big body, can skate well. He's got a good shot. He goes to the net. Like you said, he's a guy with some polishing. Could turn out to be a guy like Chris Kreider. Maybe you start him on the fourth line, like with Matt Martin, and they can, or on the third line, he can move up and down. A great pick, and I think a really raw player who could turn out to be something of like an Alec Tuck, maybe. Yeah. I just love this guy. Really fantastic player. On to the Senators.
Oh, yeah. Senators, I mean, most of their players, again, similar to the Rangers, they're all exempting because they're so young. They haven't even finished their entry-level contract yet. But, this was an interesting pick for me. I mean, this is actually kind of probably the worst pick I've made so far. But, I think this might work out. So considering how many young guys are on my list later on and kind of before, I went with Derek Stepan here. Now, I know he's on injured reserve. I get that. And he's supposed to make a full healthy recovery. This is if he does. If he does, this is a great pick. I mean, every team that's young needs a veteran center, and Derek Stepan is a perfect candidate for it, regardless how good he's been playing. I know his points have gone down in the last few years since he's been traded. I know he's been one of the most overrated centers in the league. But again, what's wrong with taking a center that's 31 years old, and he's going to be a UFA next year? So might as well take him because honestly, this guy is a great leader, and he might also be a role for captain. Who knows? But Derek Stepan is my pick.
Yeah, I like Stepan. He's a great person and a guy who I hope makes a recovery. But I don't think he'll be touched. I think it's actually going to be a younger player named Logan Brown, who just not worked out in Ottawa's system. He's 6'6". He's honestly just hasn't really worked out. So maybe a change of scenery to play third or fourth line. And a guy who can battle for a roster spot at camp, maybe for the AHL. I don't know. Maybe a guy who just gets traded away. But a guy who could be a body in camp and maybe prove himself to be an effective NHL player that everybody talked about when he got drafted.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Now, I think the Philadelphia Flyers are on next. Cam, I'll let you kick that one off.
This one's the hottest take of the episode, everybody. I went with Nolan Patrick. I don't think he'll be protected with his injury history. I think the Flyers have too many other assets they have to put elsewhere. And a guy like Patrick, who's had some tough luck with injuries, and it's just a shame to see him not develop the way everybody wanted him to, and everybody knows he can. But if he can bounce back, he's a guy who can be a top six center for this team for the next 5, 6, 7 years, and be a really good, impactful player. And I think Jay might disagree with me, but who are you going with on Philadelphia?
Yeah, I went with JVR, James Van Riemsdyk here. And, first of all, Van Riemsdyk is a great forward. He was a top 20 goal scorer in the NHL. I honestly think that he will be a great fit for this team. Top 6 forward guaranteed. If not, he can definitely help out the younger guys in this team. He's 32, so consider it. But You got to also consider who they're protecting. I protected Nolan Patrick because I know he's been having a down year, and his career has gone off to probably the most unlucky start ever. Migraines to having even a worse season with the Flyers, that the entire team was performing bad. It's been an absolute tire fire for him. You got two guys on NMCs, Kevin Hayes and Claude Giroux, so you got to protect those. Jakub Voracek and Sean Couturier, their longest tenured players, are also being protected. I protected Travis Konechny, of course. He's their chippy guy, and they need him. He's a great goal scorer. And I protected Oscar Lindblom, because, he's also a very good forward, and he's young. So that also left me between choosing James Van Riemsdyk, who's 32, or Nolan Patrick, who's 10 years younger at 22. And I went with Nolan Patrick because I still have faith in him. Also, James Van Riemsdyk has a $7 million cap hit, which is absolutely terrible. So letting him go to free agency to go for his third team now will be more necessary, I feel. So I went with James Van Riemsdyk.
On to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, this is also a no-brainer. Three players immediately who are going to be protected. I don't know if Rutherford wants to do a rebuild yet, but if he does, Malkin's the first piece to go. But Malkin's being protected this year. Letang, Malkin, and Crosby, all three of them are guaranteed because they are on NMCs. I protected Jake Gensel. He's probably their second or third best forward on the team. I protected Brian Russ and Brandon Tanev and Kasperi Kapanen. So that left me between Jeff Carter or Jason Zucker. And Jeff Carter proved to us that he is more valuable than Jason Zucker has been. And in that playoff run, I mean, oh my God, his consistency, his performance was absolutely flawless. So I'm protecting Jeff Carter here, and I'm going to go with Jason Zucker. He's the guy I'm going to let go of, and he will join the Seattle Kraken this summer.
I actually don't have Pittsburgh protecting Jeff Carter. I think it's going to come down to him and Jared McCann. And I think obviously McCann had a pretty good year as well. So I think they'll go with the young guy, protect McCann. Carter has one more year left on his deal, but I think him heading to Seattle, you know what you're going to get out of him, probably a third line center, maybe a guy who slides up to the second line, a guy who's, he's been on winning teams. He knows what it takes to win hockey games, good offensive player, good veteran. You know what you get out of a guy like Jeff Carter. It's a solid production and a well-traveled leader. And Jeff Carter is the perfect pick for Seattle because of his experience and his ability to lead. I like this pick a lot.
Yeah. Now on to the San Jose Sharks. I had a debate between longtime veteran Brent Burns and Dylan Gambrell, but I went with Gambrell. I think, the Sharks defense is absolutely horrid. I mean, there's not much you can really say. Carlson was a terrible deal. Brent Burns is stuck there. Marc-Edouard Vlasic has no reason to even be there. He should be traded, in my opinion. But again, they're keeping those three guys. I think Dylan Gambrell is not really a big piece they should be giving up, considering the fact that, their forwards are pretty decent. You got Evander Kane, you got Timo Meier, Thomas Hertl, and Logan Couture. And, it's a decent forward line if you ask me. But again, I think this is a pretty obvious choice. So I'm going with Dylan Gambrell.
Seattle's going to select Brent Burns, a guy. This is a really risky pick, though, because he has a really big cap hit and he hasn't really performed as well as he used to. But a guy, at least he's been around the league for a while. And a guy, if he could finish out his career away from San Jose, that could do him a lot of good. And he can, back in his prime a couple of years ago, obviously he was considered to be one of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League. Obviously that's not the case anymore, but a guy, if they select him, you're getting a guy who can move the puck. He's a smart player and a guy who could run your top power play unit. So Brent Burns to Seattle.
All right, the St. Louis Blues. I'll kick this one off quickly. They're going to protect their three solid defensemen, Falk, Krug, and Pareko. So honestly, for the Blues, this is not such an obvious pick. I mean, this could be very predictable in my opinion, but I went Vince Dunn. He's a young defenseman, and he's also a very chippy guy. So this is also a great pick up for the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, I mean, if St. Louis does not trade Vince Dunn in the upcoming weeks, he'll be left unprotected, I assume, unless they go the four defenseman route. But I doubt it because they have so many forward assets to cover. My guy, Vince Dunn, I mean, this is a tough loss because he's a really solid top 4 D man. They might protect him over Falk, but I doubt it. He's a guy he's just a really solid. He's been on the trade market for the last couple of years, it feels like, but I really like this player a lot. I've been following him. He's like you said, really chippy player, can log really heavy minutes, plays a really solid, just structured game. He would be a perfect top pairing defenseman for the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah.
On to Tampa.
We're on to Tampa. Tampa has had a lot of weapons, so even if they give up anyone, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think the media has really made this obvious who they're going to pick. It's not that hard to tell. It's going to be Tyler Johnson, of course. I mean, this is not that difficult to tell. First of all, they're 18 million over the cap hit. This is one good way to maybe get rid of that. They're getting rid of 5 million right here. So 13 million more to go. Tyler Johnson has probably been one of their most valuable pieces on this franchise in their last 5-7 years. I mean, he has led them to 2 Stanley Cups, possibly the third, 2 Stanley Cup appearances. This is going to be their third one. Potentially tonight, depends on what goes in Game 4, their second Stanley Cup. He's been an incredible player, and he will be extreme. This is actually a big loss for Tampa, in my opinion. Small guy, but probably one of the best small guys out there.
Big heart,
for sure. This
guy.
is a great pick. Big hard guy, absolutely. Big loss for Tampa Bay.
I don't think Seattle's gonna take any big contracts, and that will be kind of tough for Tampa because that's probably going to be their main way of trying to relieve them. I think they're going to go with Eric Chernak, actually, a really solid defensive defenseman. You put him with Vince Dunn, that's a solid shutdown pairing, and I don't think they're going to have room to protect him, unfortunately. With Hedman, McDonough, and Sergachev being probably the locks up on the back end, and with too many forward weapons to protect, Eric Chernak to Seattle would be fabulous for Seattle. And on to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, let's hope that this does not backfire on them and cause another first-round loss. Sorry, but again, at this point, it's like you should be used to being made fun of. I mean, this is like what, the 17th year in a row now, or not in a row, but 17 years since. I went with Alex Kerfoot here. I mean, this is not something you should really be shocked about, considering they've had these small little guys out here just playing on their team. I mean, they signed a bunch of free agents. Half of their team was transformed with different guys. So honestly, this is not shocking, considering the fact that they're predicting. I'm protecting Pierre Engvall, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, John Tavares, and I actually protected Wayne Simmons because you're going to need an enforcer for that team. This team is absolutely no grit, no game at all. But that left me with Alex Galchenyuk or this dude or Nick Foligno, and I said no. Go with Alex Kerfoot. He's a younger guy, and he's much cheaper as well. So considering that, I went with Alex Kerfoot.
Yeah, fair pick. I think they're going to leave Pierre Engvall unexposed, leading to my pick, Pierre Engvall, a guy who they called up after Babcock left, and he's a good third, fourth liner, but I would probably honestly see him more as just trade bait, if anything. He's an effective player, but a guy I think he doesn't really fit into the bottom 6 of Seattle, so a guy I think they'll pick up and then quickly flip him away for a draft pick. So that's my opinion on what they'll do with Pierre Engvall. And on to Vancouver, who I have them selecting Braden Holtby, who may or may not be traded or flipped. They might use him as a backup role at Aiden Hill. I also have them having Capo Kakahonen, so I'm not sure, but I think Braden Holtby is the best player available, and if he doesn't work out, he's on a 1-year deal and he walks. Back to you.
I went with Jonah Gajovic. I mean, this is a minor dude. He's probably going to be the youngest guy in the team, but what's wrong? 783,000 cap hit. Not bad. He can just be used to develop for their future cause. So not much of an explanation needed there, but I thought this would be a solid pick. The next team is, I believe, the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets. The Capitals. Sorry. For me, I went with Vitek Vanacek here. They have, I don't know if Henrik Lundqvist comes back or not, but assuming he does, they will have 3 solid goaltenders. You can't ever count out the king. And you've also got Ilya Sorokin. Not Ilya Sorokin. What am I talking about? You also got
the Russian part, right?
Samsonov. Yeah. What am I doing? But again, they have a lot of great goaltenders. Not also to mention, if you remember that Craig Anderson is also on this team. So four solid goaltenders. Giving up 1 is not a big deal. First of all, Henrik Lundqvist has to exempt because he's injured. Second of all, Craig Anderson will probably be retiring very soon. assuming because he's 40 years old. So you left with Ilya Samsonov or Vitek Vanacek. Who would you rather protect? I would go with Ilya Samsonov. He's been much more consistent than Vitek Vanacek, and there's not much to lose here. So Vitek Vanacek is my pick.
Yeah, Samsonov's the guy for the future. And I originally had them selecting Vanacek, but it put me in a goaltending dilemma. What do you do with 4 goaltenders and solid goaltenders? So I actually went with Nick Dowd. I saw how this guy played in the playoffs, and he's a really good shutdown center, a really underrated shutdown center. He matched up with the Bergeron line every shift, and he did his fair share. He was the best Capitals player on the ice that whole series, in my opinion. And he's a guy who I think is pretty underrated. And a guy you could come in, probably play third line, and maybe you can form a shutdown line with him and some other good, reliable two-way guys. And I think that'd be a perfect checking line. And, on to the last team.
Finally, here we go. Cam, you can kick this last one off.
I'm going with Dylan DeMello of the Winnipeg Jets. I think their defense, it's going to be Morrissey, Logan Stanley, and probably I think I had Neil Pionk, and just no room for DeMello, to be honest with you. He's a really solid defenseman. The analytics community love this guy. He's really good at his own end. The guy could probably be a good, solid number 4 for this team, which, hey, if I'm Seattle and you get a guy like DeMello, I ain't complaining, that's for sure.
Absolutely. For me, I went with Mason Appleton. He's a young guy as well. He could be probably used to compete with these old guys, and, he'll have a long time here. So Mason Appleton is my pick for the Winnipeg Jets. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. That'll do it for tonight. If you like our content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and turn on the notifications for more updates of when we post. So long from us, guys. Good night.
Good night.